All right, here we go. All right, so from a news perspective, news and events, like I said, this time of year, not a lot going on. Obviously, there's WordCamps and things that are just in the planning stages. Nothing in the next couple of months or so. Like I said, I think this year, just based on for folks who attended our December meetup in the state of the word, it sounds like this coming 2023, we can expect a lot more WordCamps and other types of WordPress events. So that's exciting to just, kind of get people back meeting in person or virtually. So, be on the lookout for that. I think we'll have a lot more WordPress news and events coming up. But really the one I wanted to focus on, because it is coming up in the next couple of months or so, is WordPress 6.2. Believe it or not, we just talked about 6.1 not long ago. But WordPress 6.2 is in the works. It's currently in beta testing. As we get a little bit closer, we can share some more info about if you want to get involved in beta testing. It's pretty easy. Obviously, don't do it on your live sites. you want a test site to play around with this. But it's scheduled for release March 28th. We'll probably cover it. Peter, we may even switch around our topics a little bit when you and I talk next time. So maybe our March meetup might be covering it because it'll be right on, right prior to the release if it stays on track. Just right now, the features are still being determined, which ones are going to go into it. But from all accounts I've heard, it's going to be the beginning of phase 3 of this, block editor / Gutenberg roadmap for WordPress. So again, if you missed it, in December, we covered a bit of that state of the word talk where they talked about the different phases. But basically, phase 3, this coming phase of WordPress, is really around collaboration. So things like having real-time collaborations, anyone who's worked on a Google Doc or things like that, where you can see who's marking up a document, et cetera, et cetera. Think about that from a website or WordPress standpoint, including some features of WordPress that really do need some updating, like drafts and revisions, et cetera. Those pieces have been there for quite a while and really haven't been changed. So that's kind of the scope of it that we're hearing right now. So as I said, more to come on this, and as we learn more, we'll let you know. And obviously, like I said, in March, as it gets much closer, we're hoping that will be the focus of our March meetup. So that's kind of the big news topic in terms of what's coming, and then we'll skip the tool and spotlight because that's the rest of our presentations about that. So let me
one quick thing to add: the Page Builder Summit, which is done by Nathan Wrigley from WP Builds, is towards the end of February. So we may meet before that, but that's a free that's a free thing. It's really, really good. And what's nice about the Page Builder Summit is the whole thing is free. You can pay initially for the ability to kind of have unlimited access to everything afterwards. And there's one thing that I enjoy, so you'll relate to this too, which is hopping on some of their, when they have some, the people who paid, you can have meetups in between. Nathan sets up some things and some really interesting conversation because it's a wide variety of people. But that's the Page Builder Summit.
And at the Page Builder Summit last year, Peter made a suggestion to Kathy Sant from Cadence, and we got, I think, a new group and an immediate response, and he made an impact on how Cadence's roadmap switched. So you can do that by asking a question.
Yeah, that the more of that kind of actual direct interaction has been, it really is something.
And that's what's nice about the WordPress community. Like I said, people are very accessible, so.
Yeah.
And WordPress, the meetup, the national one is late August in Maryland. They're saying DC, but it's really at the big convention center in Maryland.
Yeah.
The tickets go pretty fast, but
that's WordCamp US, right?
WordCamp US.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So let's dive into our topic tonight. I think we have a lot to cover. We're not going to cover it all. We've determined that, but at least to get the ball rolling a little bit. So this is, like I said, the idea behind this is, the course of the past several years, Peter has definitely been sharing a lot of tools that are outside of WordPress, but that really do help with the WordPress or website building process. So we thought let's kind of focus an entire talk on that and bring that topic together. So what we're going to do, we'll do our real quick speaker introductions of who we are, and then we're going to focus all of our time on going over some of our favorite tools, and we want to hear yours too. So we're hoping this will be a good interactive sharing of knowledge here. And then we'll just wrap it up with some final thoughts, etc. So
yeah, and Ray, if I could just jump in real quick, we're gonna share a fraction of our favorite tools because it's really hard to kind of get our heads around it. What we hope happens during the conversation, if anybody either has a tool that they want to share or has a question about, do you have a tool to do the thing that I need to do, that is equally not encouraged, because probably do, and would love to be able to just share that with you if there's something that you need. Like this week I came up with something that I needed, found it, and it was like, oh, this goes on my list. So we'll talk about that later.
Right. Good point. Excellent. So real quick, who I am, one of the co-organizers of the Hartford WordPress meetup group. I'm Ray. I've been involved in IT for 25-ish years. As I said, 3 people joined earlier. I really started my career as like a developer / software architect, working for some large corporations, but been using WordPress kind of exclusively, I guess, now for the past 6-ish years, 6+ years. So I'm self-employed, obviously a website developer, designer, whatever. I live in Newington, Connecticut, married, no kids, and I am a geek. Peter.
Yeah, I'm very similar to Ray. Self-employed now. I've been using technology for marketing communication purposes for quite a few years now. Been on my own, not even sure now, 8 years. WordPress for about 10, a little bit more than that. I live in South Windsor, Connecticut. Married, 2 adult children, and 3 cats probably running around. If you see a tail go by, that's one of the cats. So.
All right, so let's dive into the topic. This one doesn't really much of an introduction, but just I thought I'd throw a slide together just to have something to talk about here, just to set context. Because again, if you think about it, WordPress itself, especially WordPress currently, there's a lot you can do entirely in WordPress. Even some of the things we're going to cover tonight, we should probably point it out. Like, yeah, you can do this in WordPress, but sometimes when you want to do a little bit more functionality, it makes sense to use the right tool for the right job. So WordPress can do a lot, but it can't do everything. And again, some things it's doing better than it did before, but I think sometimes you want to find a tool that's more specific to a task. And finding the right tools, as I learned over time and getting exposed to more tools, we'll share a combination of free and paid, but as Peter rightfully pointed out, as we were talking about setting up this topic, we didn't want to just focus on free tools, because sometimes a paid tool is worth it. If it helps you solve a problem and saves you some time and money, it's worth whatever the cost of it is. So finding the right tool can definitely do that for you. And we're hoping by doing this discussion, by you sharing with us, everyone on here and people who watch this recording, we'll learn some new tools they never knew about before and try them out and see, will they benefit you? Some will, some won't. Some you may look at and say, nah, I have something better, or I don't have that problem, so I don't need it. But it's at least to kind of expose you. The last bullet point I just threw in here too is that there's also this tendency of, the FOMO, fear of missing out kind of thing, of sometimes, oh, there's a new tool that comes, and sometimes if a tool is doing a decent job, you're sometimes better off just investing and learning all the things that tool can do. And I'm guilty of this too. I have a couple of tools that I've either purchased or just haven't dove deep enough into to learn, hey, wait a minute, it does this already. I don't need another tool. So, invest the time in learning the tools. I think that's another way to just really get a lot more benefit out of them. Any other context thoughts, Peter, before we dive into the list?
No, other than, when you're facing a problem, somebody else has faced it and have come up with some things. So, doing that Google search, one of the tools that I actually didn't put in, when we can talk about it at some point during the thing. I mean, Google and the Google search is a fantastic tool, but knowing even how to use that the most effectively so that you're finding kind of the right tools. Again, I had something I had to take care of this week, and with the right kinds of searches and limiting it down and all, you can find all kinds of things that are out there. Some very surprising how much they do. It's just this kind of hidden gem out there. So,
and sometimes it's describing your problem correctly. So I just, as an outside of WordPress example, when I've done like plumbing repairs in my house, I'm like, I don't know what that part is called,
Right.
As soon as I narrow it into the region, then I do my search, I'm like, oh, there's the video that shows me how to fix the whatever, the WYSIWYG thing or something. So
That's right. Yeah.
So again, because there's lots of tools, this is just our basic framework of how we're going to discuss them. So we're talking a little bit about like project/time management things. So we'll talk about some tools related to that and kind of how that relates to website development. Things related to fonts and colors, finding, editing, and resizing images. That's a big one. So we'll probably spend, I think, a lot of time on that for folks. Also website and file management, whether you manage one or multiple websites, I think that's an important one. There's tools around that. Auditing and testing, and then technical tools. So that's kind of the broad categories.
Yeah, and of course I snuck in a few more categories when Ray was
talking. That's fine. That's fine. So we're actually, the nice thing too is we're going to do this through, Peter created an awesome page for us that we'll look at. So, and do you mind, can you put the link, Peter, to this page in the chat so if people want to follow along?
Yeah.
We'll send it out afterwards too.
Absolutely.
So let's kick it off a bit with project and time management. So what does this mean? And from a website developer standpoint, specifically, how does this relate to creating websites? So the first tool, I put this one on, and I won't speak to these a lot, or I won't spend a lot of time on them, but just so you're aware of them. So the first one's Trello, if people are aware of this tool or not. And again, from my software development kind of background previously, that's where I first became aware of and used this tool or tools like it. So the idea of Trello is having the ability to take a project and break down the parts of the project into different tasks and then phases. So for example, I'll show you, I'm signed into one of my Trello test accounts. I don't use this as much anymore, but where I found this was really useful, especially as I was beginning to create websites and beginning to, start up my business and really just beginning to work on more complex sites. So it allowed me to create these project workspaces that I was able to capture all the tasks in a project. So for example, I don't know if some of these may also be a little bit old in terms of what they were, but this was the idea. So when I was reaching out to a client or working with a client for the first time, I needed to track things like, I'd first do a kickoff or discovery meeting. Then I would do some sort of current state analysis. I'd create the proposal, etc. But I think about as you're building a website too, there's parts that you want to do. You want to build it in WordPress, you want to do testing, but eventually you're going to do things like deploy the site out. You need to acquire a domain, etc. There's a lot of moving parts to creating and launching a website. So the way this tool works is the nice thing is once you create this, you can then reuse these boards over time. So the idea is when you finish up a task, you can say, all right, maybe this one I'm waiting for something from a client, so I'm in the waiting phase. This one I'm in the middle of doing the discovery. This one maybe I'm done with this. And over time, this is also called like a Kanban board in Agile development. You get to see these different pieces, and eventually, there's pieces you ignore, but the thought is all these eventually go to some sort of lane. They're either completed, in progress, waiting, et cetera, et cetera. And for each one of these, and nice about Trello is free.
Yep.
As I said, you can build these. You can search, people have already created Trellos too that you can use and either import or use them for ideas. So launching a website for the first time or whatever task. And Trello doesn't have to be specific to WordPress. Any big project, if you're remodeling something in your house, you could use a Trello board, and you can collaborate with other people on it too. That's the neat piece around it. So that's my first. Has anyone ever used, and for every one of these tools too, I'd love to put either in chat or just mention it. Has anyone else used Trello and found it useful? Good. Maybe it's a new one to folks.
I don't use it, but I've had other groups ask me to use it for a project we were working on.
Yeah.
I found it a little difficult because we have so many projects going on at once. Do you have that experience?
I'd say it's good for small to medium-sized projects at the most. Yeah, once you get beyond a certain number of people, then unfortunately you fall into the bigger, like in the enterprise world that people were using Microsoft Project, et cetera, you fall into bigger tools or Agile development, they're bigger tools. This one's a decent one, I think, for small to medium-sized projects and groups too. A small size group, I think, is ideal for this.
It's good if you have clients because it's relatively simple enough. Once you go through, walk through it. I've used some other tools. Asana is another one, and you get into different, Basecamp, all kinds of things. I come back to Trello because, and I think this is maybe a theme for a lot of the tools. whatever works for you, the way you work, the way you think. Trello works for me because to me, it's sticky notes on a whiteboard.
Exactly. That's what this Kanban is supposed to represent. And that was the old agile development world and software development. It's supposed to be literally sticky notes, sticking them around a whiteboard. So
yeah, and you create columns and you move it over and you've got notes and you've got follow-ups. It appeals to my way of thinking and what I do in the physical world. So Trello, I'm a big fan of.
The other one I'll share real quick. I won't spend as much time. So is another tool. So that's Trello. Think of Trello as tracking a project, something at a larger scale. Toggle, there's other apps that do this too, or as more of a time tracking tool at a smaller scale, at really at an individual scale. So why would you want to do something like this from a website standpoint? Well, again, if you're a freelancer, you may need to, or track your time. You're switching between projects. So how much time did I devote to this project or this client, et cetera, et cetera. If you're an individual, especially again, I think back to my beginner days, in my software development days, it's hard to estimate in the beginning because you don't know. It's like, how long will it take me to build the site? No, an hour or two. Next thing you know, 4 hours later, 8 hours later, you're still struggling with things. So I found this really useful in the beginning, just measuring myself and seeing how I've improved over time. So Toggle is the app that I use. And I'll show you there's a desktop version of it for different systems. So here's the Toggle app for Mac. So what you can do in Toggle is, you can either create projects or tasks. Let's say I'm doing I don't know, a WordPress install or something. And immediately, if I just click the play button, it'll start tracking the time I'm working on something. But then I can categorize it too. I can say, what does this task relate to? So here's one, for example. So I can say it's part of a project, it's part of a client, it's part of a workspace. So if you need to categorize things a bit more, you really can track it over time. You can go back to it. So let's say you stopped and started this task. So it's really a fine-grained tracking of anything, again, website development, et cetera, et cetera. And there's reports, again, this is free as well too. I think you're limited to how many projects you can create for the free one. You can always go back to your reports and look over time, like, hey, how long did it take me initially to build this site or do this task, or whatever? Have I gotten better over time, et cetera? So it's good feedback. It's a good measurement feedback. I don't use it consistently anymore. I've kind of learned sometimes starting the timer and then stopping it isn't worth it, or I forget to do it. I mean, it's smart enough to tell you like, hey, you've been idle for a minute, so you don't want to discard it. So that's a piece of it. But the other piece of Toggle, sorry, let me just show this real quick. The other piece I've added into it is this Pomodoro thing. So if you ever heard of the Pomodoro technique, Pomodoro is this idea of having focus time on a task. So the idea was originally it was part of a timer, like physically a timer. Think of it as like an hourglass or something. So during that timer period, you're just going to stay focused on this one task. But once it's done, you take a break. Mentally you recharge. You get to surf the internet or do whatever you want to do. Get up and walk around, and then you turn the timer again and you do it. So Toggle actually has a built-in, pretty handy, little Pomodoro thing. So you can change how long you want this to work for, but it's the same idea. It's focused. So let's say you're creating a blog post, you're doing something else. Set the Pomodoro timer. It'll tell you, okay, once it runs down, it tells you, okay, stop and take a break. Or you can stop at this point and say, all right, I want to finish early. I want to take my break. So it's a neat little thing. It's just built into this. You don't need another app to do that. So that's
great. Does Toggle let you put in notes about what you did? Like if you're a contractor and I spent 45 minutes working on your project, these are the things I did. So when you go to bill it, you can list them.
I would probably say you would break the tasks down, and those are the individual tasks you would track in Toggle. Or you can track something at a larger scale too. So as far as I know, there's not, so within like, let's say a time that I've entered, as far as I know, at least for the free version, there isn't a way to add additional notes to it. It's just this task, this time. You can assign, as I said, tasks to projects or clients. And I think the paid version, you can actually add costs. So if you're doing a chargeback, a billable rate, you can add that as well. So that's Toggle. So again, 2 time management / project management things, Trello and Toggle.
Hey, Ray, do me a favor, just refresh that page because Toggle's spelled wrong and I fixed that. So some people, it was put in the chat a tool called ClickUp, and this is how the tool thing worked. I don't know if ClickUp, but something I recently learned about is right here. We don't have to go into the details, but is Notion. Now, historically, and for the last gabillion years, I was an Evernote user, and I stopped using Evernote. It got clunky for me personally, and then Google Docs was the place that I just do everything and have been doing everything and still do a lot of things with it, especially when I have to do some quick note taking. But I'm discovering Notion, and Notion sounds like it's kind of like ClickUp, which is it's a suite of tools that are presented. So right now I'm just using it as a note taker, but it's one of these where you go in and there's many templates for different things you want to do. So and there's home and business, and there's paid for the personal stuff. And then as you move up, it's again, like most of these, where you have teams and collaboration that you can add to it. So a lot of the project management tools are like that. But Notion is the one that I started using, and ClickUp is one that I'm going to look at based on what I saw in the chat. Did you want to demo anything from Notion, or you want to just mention it? Yeah, I don't think we got a lot to cover. If we can come back, if anybody wants to go over anything, or if you do want me to show something. I'm the same with Evernote too. And the other one too is what's the Microsoft one? OneNote too, which some people like, they swore by it, like that was their life was in OneNote. I'm like, for me, again, this is what we were saying before. It may work for you, it may not work for you. All right, so this is all, I think the first piece is around project and time management. If other people have ideas of things that they've used that you think are worth suggesting, throw them in the chat window. As we finish up a bit, we'll look through those, or if Peter sees ones, or we'll bring them to everyone's attention. And if anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand. I think we have that ability, or just so. All right, so let's talk now, I guess, more specific to websites themselves. So, and some of these I think we used, if you go back to our series, when we had the series we did over a year ago now called Let's Build a Site Together. And as we started that, we talked about the process of starting off before you build a site. One of the things you want to do, ideally, is you want to have the time where you can choose the right colors. And again, if you're working with the client will give you feedback on this. Maybe it's branded colors, etc. And font pairings. So the idea of not having a ton of different fonts in your website, using a couple of fonts, a body font, heading fonts, and maybe an accent font or something else for special circumstances. And same thing with colors. So where do you find those? I assume most people know, Google Fonts is these days for web fonts in particular, Google Fonts are most likely the types of fonts that you want to use on your sites, because they scale well, etc. They're free, etc., etc. But the problem is, if you look, there's around, I don't know how many Google fonts are there these days. I don't know, hundreds-ish. I don't know how many. But so how do you know which ones look good together? So that's where the idea of a font pairing tool comes in. There's lots of these out there. And in fact, at one point, as I was looking at this, I could have sworn the Google Fonts tool lets you do font pairings here and see what they look like. But it seems like that's gone. So scroll down, I think, if you... That's where they start introducing. Wasn't there something that used to be here where you used to be able to add like a font and compare two of them together to show what they look like? I don't know if it's there anymore. So there's many tools out there that do something like this. So even this one, I wouldn't say it's necessarily the best one. This is one I've gone to several times. It's called FontPair. It's a fontpair.co. So the nice thing about this is it gives you that visual representation of what do these fonts look like together. And you can kind of start. So let's say I want to start with a serif, or I'll say a serif. Again, serif, I believe, with the slabs on the bottom. Peter, working in the news industry, would know this better than I. So let's say I want to use the Glacio font. This shows you some other, again, the nice thing, just kind of like the Google one, it shows you what it will look like in different settings. But the pairings part is the piece I think I really wanted to show. So what fonts look good together? So, and you'll often see these too. We'll talk about a tool later to inspect other websites. That's another way too, to find, hey, I like how this site looks. I like how these things are paired together. You can inspect it and find them. So for example, here's what Work Sans and Merriweather look like together. If you click on this, it'll show it to you in a page. If you want to flip them around too, it'll say, here's what the types look like, etc. So it's a visual tool to try around different ideas and see what things look like together without having to go into your site and create a bunch of dummy text. That's another way to do it. I find tools like this are a little bit quicker.
Peter, do you have any other font pairing tools, or other folks have like font pairing tools that?
I don't. I use this one. I've gone down to one font a site when I can.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, and by using, colors and spacing and things like that, I'm very excited where the variable size, I can't remember, and how that's
Yeah.
going to be playing into WordPress going forward, and what options that is going to give us. So now having the options of line height, letter spacing, and all is really going to make the font management much more directly to what you're doing, if that's what you like doing. So,
Peter, are you building sites with rems now instead of pixels?
I'm still sort of in the old pixel world for the most part.
We moved to
I'm trying-
rems.
I
We
do, I
moved
do,
to rems for mobile
I
because
kinda-
it,
yeah, I kind of do both. I mean, we had that talk
Yeah.
a little while ago. We talked about different like units, so rems and ems. That again for different, for padding and all those things. Yeah, I think the thing I found with rems is if you go with that scale, you definitely have to be consistent across the site. You can't cheat later and throw in some pixel settings, and then things get thrown off. So
Yeah, I find with the fonts and with the different themes that I'm using and all that, I'm going into mobile, tablet, and all, and changing. That's kind of a matter of habit. I think my big change is going to be when again, what is the word that's coming? Is it responsive? Fluid.
fluid, yeah.
Typography. When fluid typography hits, that I'm going to focus on that, because to me that feels like that's the most, going forward, that's going to be the most adaptable to all the different screen sizes and things like that. So
Laura has a question. Laura.
It's just a comment that I've started using the rem instead of pixels for to have it easier for mobile responsiveness. But I was just at a workshop and they used VH.
Yeah. Well, that's another, so vertical height, or I'm sorry, viewport height or viewport width.
For images.
For images, yeah. So we like I said, I know we covered it in our mobile talk previously, but that's the thing that gets confusing is depending on what you're talking. If you're talking padding, there's different ones you can use for mobile. If you're talking, it's image sizes, there's different ones. But for fonts specifically, ideally rems or ems was the other one too. Those are the ones you probably want to stick with, or pixels.
But the discovery of the VH, the vertical height, and having that be a percentage of something is kind of a revelation when you first see that it's there in your WordPress as an option, and you go, okay, I'm putting a cover block or whatever, and I want it to go full screen. It used to be like, well, what is full screen?
Depends on the screen. Yeah.
It's the person. Now it's like you just tell it, I want it 100% full height, or 50%, or whatever. So it's great.
All right, the other one I'll cover quickly because I know we have a lot of ones. Is the again, from a pairing standpoint, is the Adobe Color Wheel, and this one you could use beyond websites. You can use it for when you're painting your house or repainting a room. It's the same concept, at least. You go to Home Depot and they have similar things. This idea of color theory and color harmony, which I don't know all of these, but analogous versus complementary versus I'm no color theorist, but the nice thing about this site, and there's other ones out there too, where you can basically try out different palettes. You can see I want to see for any given color, and I believe this one does as well too. You can paste in a code and say, hey, show me a color value that's complementary to this, etc. Or in this case, it's showing like basically a whole a color tab. So what would you do with this? Then these values are something that you would copy, then paste into your theme. So we've been using that Cadence theme quite a bit. So Cadence has a place where you can put in, you wouldn't put all of these necessarily, but you would pick your, your primary accent color, et cetera, your button colors and things like that. So this is a free one. It's by Adobe, obviously. This one gets pretty complicated too. There's a lot of different options you can look at. There's other tools out there too that do color pairings, but this one I tend to go to quite a bit.
Yeah, my list of color tools is way too long to go over. I like the coolers and Peloton, things like that. But, and we can spend some time maybe even at the end. I did put it in this, but the Adobe Express world, Adobe is making a lot of tools available for free now, and they're getting much better in how they present them, and even kind of one-click tools. And I think the wheel is part of the design thing. So they're bringing people into the Adobe world, and even paying online for some of these tools, but there's a lot free. So it's a tiered kind of thing.
Yeah. Like this one I'm looking at, for example, just showing also exploring. I mean, because yeah, there's other sites out there to show you like, here are the trendy color sets, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, but again, the thought, like, why would you use this from a website standpoint? Going back to design in general, having colors that complement each other or that work well together. It's one of those things, like I'm no designer or artist, that I don't pretend to be one, but you know when colors seem to fit together, or more likely, you know when they don't fit together and that they stand out. So again, this is a free tool online. There's other ones out there too, but I think this one is quite powerful, the Adobe Color Wheel. All right, how about finding images, Peter? These are some of these.
Yeah, how about I grab the screen?
Yep, let me stop over here. Thank you.
Okay, and then one other thing about the color and the color wheels, we're going to have, I don't know, did we decide maybe even next time we'll do the beginning of the accessibility discussions?
Yeah,
and colors are a big part of that. So color choice,
absolutely.
there are a lot of color tools that are specific to accessibility. So stay tuned for that. I thought it was important to cover some of the, there's so many sources for images. One of the worst ones is, of course, Googling for an image and copying it off of the Google image search and thinking that you can just do that. So please don't. There are many choices for getting stock photography, for getting, I'm listing some free ones here. My stock photography, I use Deposit Photos. I did not list here in case anybody uses that. That's a tool that it's kind of like an iStock photo. AppSumo is a place where you can occasionally go and buy credits and all. So I have a stockhold of credit. So I do like Deposit Photos. I have a lifetime access to another one that I don't use anymore because it's since gotten very sad. You know, there's other places for images are and graphics. I know I use Flat Icon is another one that gives you, if you need some icons, they have a free and paid. I'll add those to the list. The ones I did put on the list are the free. So Unsplash, which is a place where, oh, that link is wrong. I will go to Unsplash. I've got to fix that link. So the Unsplash is a place where you can search for, you know, images. Many people probably use them, use this. The main thing with Unsplash is that you need to give credit attribution for the images that you grab, and also be aware with a lot of the free tools that, just like here, you know, this top level, these are iStock photos. So if you go out there now, you're on a paid site. So you have to know where you're on any of the free image sites. You're very often surrounded by the paid stuff. And if you find something, doesn't mean don't get it, but just know the difference between paid and not paid. Now, if I go back to our tool thing, hopefully the other links will work for me. Openverse, why is that doing that? I got to change that. So let me go to.
And while you're doing that, question came up. I don't use a lot of videos in mine, but free suggestions for free video sites. Anyone? Sue, was that your hand raised to answer the question, or do you have a comment on? Oh, you're on mute, Sue.
Hand wasn't raised to answer the question, although there are some places, I'm not sure if you've got them there. One is Pexels and one is Pixabay.
Yep.
They're both freebies, but after the latest horror at Unsplash, one of the things we've done, and this isn't really that hard, if you use custom fields, you create a custom field, attach it to the media library, and whenever one of your clients uploads a picture or you upload a picture, you put the link in where you got the picture from. So it's always attached to the picture. And if the good people at iStock and Getty decide they want to give you a hard time, you've got the link you got it from. And it's just a way of keeping track and tell your clients you can make the field required. So a client can't upload a picture without putting in a link where they got it. It
That's right.
protects you.
Yeah.
But, having had a problem with that many years ago, it's now in our contracts. So be
Yeah.
careful with free images.
I have that in my contracts too, talking about, only licensed images will, and Getty and iStock will find images that have just been gleaned off that are theirs. And you will get, letters that talk about money. So
although don't confuse those with the scams that we've talked about before. The famous boilerplate scam letter which says, I've reviewed your site and I found copyright images.
yeah, the most famous one is, I'm Kathy so-and-so and I'm a photographer and I can't believe you use my images and all.
Right.
No, the ones from Getty are clearly from Getty, and there'll always be a way to double check that. Along the lines of whenever you're looking at images and all, a tool that I will add to the list that I like, you can do the Google reverse image search, but that gets a little funky because a lot of times it wants to show you like products and things like that. tineye.com is a way of, you can upload a photo or look at something that's on a website, and then it can tell you where else that image shows up. And you can use it for a number of reasons. Make sure, one, that is it a unique image, has anyone taken an image, so on and so forth. But also, and this is an interesting one, how often has that image been used? The business people standing around a computer, the people shaking hands, that you say this has been used 10,000 times. You get an idea. So there's some neat tools for kind of saying, hey, that's why some of the stuff, like when we go back here to and Openverse is WordPress.org. One of the biggest tools, WordPress.org, and all the things that are under there. So under download and extend, this is where we have our themes, patterns, plugins. That's where Openverse lives. Openverse is has a ton. I wonder, I'll use the same search. A ton of images. They also have audio, and when you look at an image, it'll tell you what kind of credit you need to give. Sometimes it's just straight, other times, and you copy the text, you use it. So that's free images, but with credit given. And then related to that,
sorry, so Openverse, did they also, in the dropdown, I could have sworn I may be wrong this, but did they also add video to that as well too, or is it just audio? I'm trying to think from the state of the word if they said that video is coming to that too.
Yeah, I haven't seen video.
Okay, all right, that maybe I misheard that then. Sorry, see, but yeah, not an Openverse.
And then the other one is, I'm not sure if they have not yet added the link, but for totally free photos is under WordPress.org. It is /photos, and these are images that are you can submit photos to WordPress.org photos. These are all available and without attribution. You can just use them as you wish. One of the things that's great about that is, first of all, if you're kind of just putting something together and you just want to grab some images, you could do that, and you can experiment with them. What is expected to happen is that at a point in time, the ability to be in the media library within your WordPress install and then do a search for free images in the photos directory will be connected. There are plugins that allow you to do that with some of the other tools, but having that built into WordPress is just yet another thing that's going to make kind of that editing and building experience.
And Peter, Laura in our chat says she actually has 4 images that are in the WordPress.org photo directory.
How awesome is that?
It is super easy. So I highly recommend. I did it with my phone. I'm not a professional photographer or anything, but I had gone to Hawaii and I have a couple of sunsets there and just a bouquet of flowers and a sunflower. So
Awesome.
yeah, it was really cool to be able to do that.
I wonder how now I'm curious. I'll look later, but yeah, it's neat, and you kind of have your own.
Yeah, you can look under my name too.
That's what I thought. So
I'll put my last name in the.
I know Adam.
Adam
Laura
Owen.
and I are also
Edemonis.
on a number of meetups. Laura has quickly risen to the top of the WordPress communicators, right? Going from relatively new to now chairing whatever, emceeing various things, so that, which is awesome. Let's see that. But this is, again, that I wonder what I'm not doing right. We'll come back to it. Nothing found, sorry.
Yeah,
Again, and it's beta at this point, right? Not in the link, but it's going to be a great place to find a lot of tools, a lot of images, but that's always a handy thing. The other thing that I had, and we just simply will not have the time to go over it, is the famous and yet very, very good tool, Canva. I'm curious, how many people here know of or use Canva? Because, yeah. Canva is super popular, and is super popular for a reason. I'm not going to. Everything is clicking to the same thing. I wonder why. I'm going to fix that when you call up stuff. So Canva is fantastic, and it with a paid account, you can kind of not pay for a whole lot of other things if you go, because you can get stock images, you can build your social stuff, you've got the presentations, posted videos, so many things now. There's video building tools coming into Canva. I think there's screen capture has come, and I have other tools for that too. So Canva, you can start for free, is a great place for anyone who hasn't used it. And I do want to show the Adobe Express. That was the other thing I've got on the list. Everything's linking to that same link, that your funky link there that you're going to show them there, Ray. But the Adobe Express site is really awesome because, again, there's so many things, like under quick actions, you've got and Ray's got to remove background, but there's so many things that you can do just through a one-click kind of thing, where it's like, okay, drag and drop, convert an image, like a logo to SVG and things like that. So the express.adobe.com, great site. Yes, there's a like anything, there's a paid version at some point. This is under a paid account that I have with Adobe. I can show it. We can go over it, but yet another tool, and there's so many others, but there's a lot of failed things. I'm sure people in the chat would also have some things to show. But Ray, I'm going to hand it back to you, and then I'm going to quietly edit things in the back.
That's fine.
So
yeah, I think you need to stop sharing. Actually, I'll take it back. And I put in the chat too, but a lot of people use Canva. Yeah, if you're working with nonprofits, or you are a nonprofit, don't forget to
yeah, great point.
a paid account for free. So that's I think I like about Canva. A lot of people don't know. Some people may, especially if you're using the free one. I would say if you get a paid one, or working with a nonprofit, their photo library, their image library is quite extensive, which is great.
Yes.
And they have videos too. That's the thing. The paid one does have videos that you can use. All right. Yeah, Adobe Express I haven't used before, the online one. So a quick one. Again, this is, as Peter was saying, I'll be curious to see, if Adobe Express does a better job than this. But again, if you've used Photoshop, obviously one of the things a lot of people do in Photoshop is removing images, removing backgrounds, etc. But if you want a quick and dirty one that works pretty well, I'd say, again, your mileage may vary, and it really varies depending on the image itself. But a real quick one that's impressive is this remove BG. So if you just want to remove a background from an image, and in this case, I think I'm going to use one of their sample ones. I'll use this cute cat photo. So you can see here, I think this shows you the before and after. So here's the cat with a dark background, and here's the background image removed. And you can download, again, this as a PNG. So why would you want to do this? So a lot of times you want an image that has a clear background because it fits better. If you look at some professionally designed websites, one thing you'll notice is a lot of times they'll have images that look like this cat. It's more striking. It grabs your attention more, having a subject without all of this background information around it. So, how can you do that yourself? Well, you can buy Photoshop and learn, the magic wand and remove things. Or in some cases, a tool like this can just do it for you instantaneously. So remove BG. kind of a one-trick pony, but in a lot of ways, that's all you need for something quick and dirty. So again, I generally, when I need to do something like that, I'll try this out first. If it works fine, if not, then I'll bust out my actual Adobe Photoshop desktop tool. Then another quick and dirty one too. There's lots of these out there, but one that I've been using more recently is BeFunky, the cleverly named BeFunky. So it's another free image editing tool. So as I said, you can do this in Photoshop. You can do some of these things in other desktop tools, but for something I think pretty simple and pretty user friendly. Again, this one's free, so you can set up a free account. It has a lot of other options. Some things overlap with Canva. For example, you can do, or even like you can make your photos get edited more like Instagram. You have Instagram type filters. Oops, sorry, let me go back to BeFunky. You can create collages here too. I think I've used that as well. So if you want to create a quick collage of photos, but the photo editor is the piece I'll just show real quick. So, let me just grab a test photo of theirs. So from a website standpoint, and this is I go back to WordPress now, if you're using, the latest version of WordPress and a theme, well, I guess it doesn't matter if the theme necessarily supports this, but within WordPress, the media library, you can do a lot of photo editing. You can crop, you can do, kind of basic photo editing. So, why would you want to use a tool outside of that? It's convenience sake and the ability to, rather than going into WordPress using that user interface, for me personally, I find an interface like this a lot simpler. So, here's the types of things I would typically do. So let's say somebody sends you a photo, or, you have a photo of your own that you want to put on your website. The first things you want to do is probably resize it. The nice thing about this tool, again, it's smart. So let's say I want to make it, it's gonna be a small photo on my website. So I changed it to 500 pixels. It'll keep the scale properly for you. You can lock the aspect ratio, etc. And then let's say you want to do something like cropping. Cropping is pretty visually simple. I think there might even be an iPad tool for BeFunky. There's other tools out that are similar to this. So again, really simple. And the nice thing is once you crop it or resize it, whatever, you can then save a version of that down to your desktop. So you can do this again. You can do this in Photoshop, etc. But this one's a quick tool just to kind of do it on the website. Any other, like I said, there's a lot of these out there. I've changed them over the years. I was using one called Ribbit for a while, then I forgot there was PicMonkey, I think was another one I was using for a while, and then that one turned to paid. So this to me is kind of the one I've landed on. Has anyone else used this one? Anyone used BeFunky before? No, try it out. Again, I think from a basic standpoint, there's the paid part of it is where it gets additional features. Like for example, I think there's these effects. Some of them are pretty neat. I'll show one real quick if I can see it. It's the cartoonizer. I really like the cartoonizer. Unfortunately, if you're using the free version, it's going to give you this lousy this watermark here. But yeah, it's kind of neat. There's other tools that could do something similar. So. That's BeFunky. So Short Pixel, this one's yours.
Yeah, so I'll just mention, so Short Pixel, many people may have used it. It's a great plugin. But if you go to the website itself, and yeah, Ray, these links I'm going to show at the end kind of like what I use to do this. And okay. This is the whole when you're editing something 5 minutes before a presentation, you're bound to run into issues. So
you want me to open it up? I can open Short Pixel.
Yeah, why don't you open up Short Pixel, because one of the things I want to show in Short Pixel is if you click at the top, so you can I'm gonna hand it to you. Yeah, the upload button. You want me to do it?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Otherwise, I'll be fumbling around for what you want me to point to.
Yeah. No big deal, because this is just what's nice about Short Pixel is if you have images that you don't want to go through the whole process of going through a Photoshop type of thing. And by the way, another tool that we've used is the Photopea, or Photopea, if you will, which is basically Photoshop online, a whole nother free tool out there. But with a tool like Short Pixel, you can go in here and upload up to 50 files just by, you drag and drop them here. You tell them if it's lossy, which means that that's the most compression. There may be some artifacts to it, but generally you couldn't see it. Glossy is, pretty much close to pixel perfect. Lossless is pixel perfect, and it will compress your files and significantly. So if you're dealing with a situation where you've got a lot of big files on your site, one thing is to resize them using the tools, but compressing them. And what's also nice is when you compress them, you can also save it as a WebP file if you're so inclined to use WebP, which now works on WordPress and the vast majority of browsers, but I guess a few Safari browsers are still an issue. But you can do all of this for free with a tool that is all based around compression and saving those. So I just, without pulling it up, but a 600 kilobyte file compressed down to 200 and look exactly the same as a WebP. It was like 150 or something like that, and now all of a sudden your site's going to run faster because you have compressed images. You can use a plugin to do this, but if you want to just go and compress a bunch of files, Short Pixels is a great drag and drop free tool that you can use.
I will say one thing about compression. I've kind of run into this as well. Yeah, Suze mentions another plugin that does this too. I don't know if it's some of the hosting I've been using lately. I'm curious other thoughts too. I've been having some issues though of compression on top of compression. Like the host I'm uploading my photos to, it'll then say crunching the photos in addition. So that, there's a little bit of a balance now of, again, just like anything, the more you crop and resave a photo, the more you're going to lose. So that whole thing of lossy, the more times you save something and crunch something, it's getting more and more lossy over time. So that ideally you want to do this once. You want to crop, you want to crunch, all that kind of stuff once, and then that's the version. So just be careful too. Sometimes again, your hosting may have some additional. You have another plugin turned on, like a caching plugin or optimization plugin that's also doing some sort of crunching too. So just be aware of that as well.
Yeah, that's why if you start with like the lossless or glossy, you're still getting some great compression. But yeah, no, you're right. It's something to pay attention to. I find the biggest issue that people have with photos when they go, "Oh my God, my photos are blurry," is because they've uploaded an image that's too small for the space that they're filling, and then when it expands. So that's probably, I dealt with that this week. That was it's one of the most common. Why do my images look so bad? It's probably because you're putting an image in that's half the size of the space that you're taking, so it's going to enlarge it and fill it in with blurriness. So so that was Short Pixel. Writing aids, many people probably have heard Grammarly. There's a lot of ways of using Grammarly, but you can use Grammarly free. You can go to Grammarly, and I just did this with a letter I wrote and copy and paste the text in, and it showed me where I made mistakes, where there could be improvements. It's a great tool. You can have it running on your site, loaded on your PC. But even as a standalone tool, Grammarly can be a big help, especially if you're doing those things where you don't need it on all the time, but all of a sudden there's a thing that you just want to get right, and you're writing a letter or something like that, or even if you're writing a blog post, copy and paste that text of blog post into Grammarly, and then see what improvements can be made.
Hey, Denise, do you mind mentioning it? You telling us a little bit more about Hyperwrite? I've never heard of it. How does Hyperwrite work?
Sure. Actually, I discovered it a couple months ago through a marketing piece on LinkedIn that I was following. And I started with the free version, and it's really, really cool. They have different templates for marketing or for email, if you want to write an email blog, if you want to repurpose content from like LinkedIn posts to a website. And it's all AI driven. Of course, to be authentic, I find that I have to, tailor it, but they give you, oh boy. And let me tell you, when you have like that writer's block,
oh yeah,
it's just fantastic. You're fine. Like, wow, I'm whipping through material. It's great.
That's
But
awesome.
we ended up, the company I work for, we ended up going with the paid version. And I'll tell you, I utilize it a lot.
Yeah.
For many different things.
So it gives you templates. Interesting. Is that part of it? So can you scroll to the top of this, Peter? Like, does it show you an example? I'm curious of what it looks like. So
If you go to the dashboard, oh, I don't know if you have.
oh, there you go.
Oh, it's,
Oh, because it's a Chrome extension. Okay.
am I on the right? Is this the hyper right you're talking about?
Yeah. I
This
think,
one right here, yes.
yeah. I think,
Yeah.
well, I think it kind of shows you to you there in that example there. So that's really neat. So that's another idea of, you're right. It's kind of writing faster through templates.
Yeah, and you know, everything now is really, AI is huge.
And
I
so
mean,
that we had some discussion in the chat about that with the chat GPT. Someday the kids will be writing all their term papers with chat GPT.
There are, and we may do something just on content, because when I was going over the tools, it was like all of the plagiarism testers and
Yeah.
here's one, and there's a few of them out there, an AI content detector that is meant to look at the text and say, does this actually look like it's written by artificial intelligence? And the concern being that Google may penalize content that doesn't look like a human had any kind of intervention with it.
yeah, well, you know what's nice about this too, Peter, is it gives you like, you can put something in and
Yeah.
it will give you 3 samples. And I'll look at them and I'll maybe mix and mingle them, or as long as it's authentic and true to what, we're promoting or marketing.
Yeah.
I think it's a fantastic tool. But yes, you will have someone like anybody really in the marketing world in AI, they will abuse it,
Yeah.
sadly,
But it's a good, it seems like it could be a good start, especially I deal with clients sometimes who it's like pulling teeth to have them just like explain the benefits. What does your business do? Like, who's your customer? So at least throwing stuff into this as ideas that let somebody react to, because that's the thing, right? So all this stuff is the fear of the blank page. A lot of these things we're showing too, with the blank website, the blank page, having something at least that you can begin with and say, yeah, it's not quite right, but it's the bones of something. I could turn it to something better. I think that's how these tools are probably best used.
Exactly. And in the industry that I'm in, I'm really still learning a lot, but it's like it's energy. We're in the energy services, and EV charging and everything going on. It's great because now I can really put something together, like a blog, for example, like the sales engineers will give me information and I can put something in. It's a great tool. I find it extremely helpful.
That's great. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Oh, we're a live demo.
It got in, so I wanted to see. So
yeah, that's my problem with it lately. I tried it. It's like, it's too many people.
yeah. And so what we're talking about, we could do a whole thing on artificial intelligence, but I'll tell you, it is a great tool for things exactly what we were just talking about with the replacement for lorem ipsum. Now the challenge is sometimes you want lorem ipsum because you want to force the fact that, hey, I don't want to give you any kind of content, but a lot of times we've got people that if you can give them something to react to that seems to match, and and this is, I just asked, how do I install WordPress on a server? We can review this, but I've actually played with like having code written for me. We've got are the gardeners here?
Sure. Yeah.
What time of year should I plant garlic? Which I already know, there you go. See, so all of a sudden it's writing my blog post for me.
In Connecticut.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about like why everybody's so excited about the chat GPT or chat.openai.com is that it knows the conversation. So I can say like, well, how about in Connecticut? And then I would get a modified thing. We didn't want to go on a whole AI thing.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's very cool. And then you can understand why people are having a lot of fun with it. I'm going to hand it back to
you. Yeah, you're right. There's a lot we can cover with just writing and ideas and stuff, which maybe we'll do that when we talk more blogging as a topic.
Yeah, we can do.
Let me grab the screen back.
A poll of the types of content, if we're getting people thinking one thing or another, we want to cover more.
All right, so let me jump back to short pixel writing aids. So these, again, your mileage may vary whether you need these tools or not, but I haven't found, again, even for one website, they'll be handy, but especially once you get beyond managing a single website, you'll find that things like applying updates, to plugins, et cetera, just sort of the management of a site, kind of beyond WordPress a little bit, can be a bit cumbersome. So one tool that has both free and paid plans is Managed WP, which I think now they're owned by GoDaddy. I don't believe they originally were, but so actually, if you have hosting, we won't talk about hosting too much, but if you have hosting on GoDaddy, I believe some stuff may be included for free with that for Managed WP, or you may get some additional features for free. But the idea is, and I won't log into an account, but basically you'll have a dashboard. This, if you can see here, this is basically what your dashboard looks like, where it'll you have, so on the client sites, on the actual WordPress site itself, there's a plugin you have to install, a Managed WP plugin. It's in the WordPress repository, and you connect it. There's different ways you can do it, but basically you connect it to your Managed WP account, to your dashboard. So what you can do then, once things are connected, is you can get, like, I get an email from my clients. I manage multiple websites for clients and maintain those sites. I'll get an email whenever I want, once a week or something, saying, hey, there's updates to be applied. So you can go to the single dashboard on Managed WP, and you can actually apply the plugin updates there. So for example, let's say, I don't know, Yoast or something like that. Let's say you're managing 2 or 10 sites, and Yoast has constantly does updates. You can do it directly from there. You can do all the sites from there, and it'll tell you, it'll bring down the sites. It'll apply updates just as if you're doing it through the back end of WordPress. But in addition to that, some of the other features they offer as well, and some of these are free, are things like doing cloud backups. You can do cloud storage there. You can do uptime monitoring, so you can set them for different levels too. So I think the free version, you get cloud backups once per month. But let's say you're managing a site for a friend or something that maybe that it doesn't change that often. Just for free, set this up. I mean, they could be on hosting that already does a backup, but it's nice to have a second backup off someplace else. So there's a lot of tools in this. So again, I won't go through it all, but check it out. You sign up for a free account for it. And again, you just have to connect your site to it. So it's Managed WP. I know there's other ones out there as well, but this is
Yeah,
one.
real quick, I'm a big fan of Managed WP. There's a self-hosted one called Main WP. Yeah, and I've got all my clients I can manage through that. And then the GoDaddy, while they own this, they're also kind of, I don't know if they forked it or whatever, but it's the GoDaddy hub, which is
Right.
They put a lot of work into that. But yeah, all the tools, and very, very affordable.
That's the thing. Yeah, I mean, just to add, like, for example, the uptime notification for a site, I think it's like $1, like $1 a month or something. So
backups are a couple bucks. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, for somebody who manages websites, I've learned you want to be the one who knows a site is down before your client does. So it's, you don't want them calling you saying, "Hi, my site's down." So it's worth the $1 just for something like that. So that's Managed WP, and then this one's for maybe some of the people don't use this much anymore, but a good tool to have just in case of certain situations is having some sort of file, some FTP client. So for people who don't know, obviously on the back end, your WordPress website, it's on a web server someplace, which then has files, including WordPress files, your plugins, your media images, et cetera, et cetera. In the past, you'd be able to go in through something like cPanel on your host and be able to do some sort of file management, some basic file management there. But it really is, I think, worth your time to set up a connection to your websites through a tool like FileZilla. And one of the reasons is if your site becomes unresponsive for some reason, let's say a hacking incident or something else, probably another common one I've actually seen quite often is not a hacking thing, but if a plugin update fails, your WordPress site will be stuck in the situation where it says, waiting for an update. So when that happens, if you know that something's really wrong, behind the scenes, there's a hidden file from that WordPress creates that basically, if you find that file and delete it, WordPress normally should clean itself up after a few minutes. If it's down, it's supposed to delete that file. But again, if you got a panicky client or you're in the middle, you don't want to wait that long. one of the quick ways you can do that is through FTP. So I'll show files. There's plenty of these clients out there. I use another one on here called CyberDuck, which is just for Mac. FileZilla, the thing I like about it is it's probably one of the most popular FTP ones out there. It's open source, heavily supported, really nice interface. Again, if you're used to using, let's say, like a file explorer type interface, and the gist behind it, maybe I'll just connect to my site just to show you what it looks like, is, once you connect to a site, I'll bring my demo site. It really looks as if you're using a plain old file explorer. So on the right-hand side, it'll show you, here's all your files on the server, and you can literally drag these over. On the left-hand side is your local computer. So wherever you want to copy files to, back and forth, you can drag things from one to the other, et cetera, et cetera. So that's FileZilla. And the nice thing is, because it is used so often and it's so popular, a lot of hosting platforms will give you a configuration file for your sites, which is cool. So then you don't have to create this from scratch. You just download one. It'll have all of the IP, because again, if you're not really technical, there's like an IP address and ports and things like that. But your host may actually have a file you can just download and then import it into FileZilla just to connect quickly.
I think FileZilla was one of the first programs I loaded when I got into putting websites together, and I still use it. And that was a very long time ago. Sue had put a comment in too, similar to that, taking away that maintenance file. You load a plugin and something goes real wrong and you can't get to anything. Using FTP through something FileZilla, and even just changing the name,
rename the directory. Yeah, there's a lot of good reasons to. And again, from that whole troubleshooting thing, I always say it's nice to at least have the connection, test it out when you don't need it, because then if you do need it, again, jump in through FTP. So that's FileZilla.
Yeah, I only put kind of the obvious. I don't know how many people actually use, but Google Drive is a great tool. It's great for sharing things with customers. I actually have a paid Dropbox account, which I use a lot. It's great for me, but it is to really kind of take advantage of all the deals, all the things it offers, especially when you get into things like, and Google Drive has this too, if you have a backup plugin or all, and it can link to and write out to your Google Drive or your Dropbox. But having a place where you can have your files, but also have documents and sheets and stuff that you can share, Google Drive is a great place in the file category.
Definitely, yeah, and you're right. That one, it's so obvious that I forgot to put on the list too. But you're right. Even things like people, again, depends what kind of form plugin or thing you use on your site. But like Fluent Forms is the one that I use quite a bit. Having that ability to save your form entries into a Google sheet. So then people who are, let's say, you don't want people signing into the back end of the website, but they want to see the entries of a form. Like I'm doing this for an organization that has like signups for an event. I have the email sent to them, but basically they want to see, just show me all the people who signed up. So it's like, well, okay, here I created a Google sheet for them, connected it to Fluent Forms, just share the Google sheet with them. They're familiar with looking at a spreadsheet. So yeah, it's a lot of these things you can connect together pretty easily into your website as well. So that's our website and file management. And then let's talk a little bit about auditing and testing. So these are a little more specialized. Some of these we've shown already in actions, like when we were talking about improving the speed and performance of your website. One tool that I use quite a bit, it can be overwhelming because it gives you a lot of data, is Screaming Frog. I think we've shown this one before, but I'll just, again, if people have never seen it before, it's a desktop tool, and there's a paid version and a free version. The difference is the paid version, the free version has a limit in terms of the number of links that it crawls. So what do I mean by crawling? So if we go to, I don't know, I'll pick on Hartford WP, I'll pick on our site here. So if you grab a URL and you put it into here, so website URL. So the idea behind is the spider. It's almost mimicking what happens when Google and other search engines come to your site and index your site. So it's going through and finding all of the links and pages, et cetera, on your site that are indexable. So it's running a crawl. And in the case of a small site like ours, again, the free version probably is good enough to crawl the entire site. We'll see if it runs into a limit beyond 200, I think is what the free one does, it'll give you a warning message. But why would you want to use this tool? Sometimes you want to use it just to catch things that you couldn't find elsewhere. So for example, once this thing's done, broken links, status codes that don't look right, things that are redirecting that don't sound right. So again, it gives you a ton of information, but the nice thing is it's pretty easy to sort through it. So good news for us, we have all 200s. That's a good status code. If we had errors that would show up here, it's like 400s, etc. It does show you things like making sure that this is just our demo site, but from an SEO, search engine optimization standpoint, you can pretty quickly see, what are all my page titles, what are all my meta descriptions, et cetera, et cetera. So it's crawling all that for you. I think the free version doesn't let you save these results, but there's also a nice summary on the side too of what things did it find on your site, and then images. That's the other good thing too. Is here's a quick way to look at all your images that it's crawled. So here's the biggest one. So we probably have something large in here. So there's other tools out there that do this. This one I find works the best, the fastest. Screaming Frog.
There's a tool real quick that I use called Xenu Link Sleuth. It has not been updated since 2010.
Yeah,
and it still works, and it's a text base. It is old school stuff, but it's just this free piece of shareware out there, and it'll crawl a site, and you get this text report where you can see all the broken links, and it can crawl deep, and it's really interesting. So that's
there's one I used one. I don't know if that's the same name. There was another one I used before, but it wasn't for the Mac. So I had to, again, I'm a Mac only. I used to run parallels and things on this, but I got rid of that. So this is the only one that seems to be cross-platform that works really well. And then this is a very specialized one, but again, when you need it, it's great to have. So this is DNS checker. So if you need to make changes to your domain, so DNS is domain name server, so that's obviously your website domain. Excuse me. If you need to make changes to any settings, so let's say, for example, I don't know, let's say you're connecting your site to Google Analytics or stuff like that, and you need to prove that you own the domain. So often, in that situation, Google or some other site will say, hey, add this text record, add this TXT record to your site. So if you have access to your domain settings on wherever your domains, let's say your domain is GoDaddy, you'll go in there, you'll put in the text record or whatever somebody tells you to do, and then you save it, but then you're like, did it work? What's going on? Why is this change not going out there? Well, it's because the domain's information needs to propagate around the world to all the different domain backbones. So sometimes instead of twiddling your thumb saying what's going on, this is a very handy tool to check those different types of records and see around the world, did your change propagate yet? So I'll pick ours again just to kind of see here. So the nice thing is you can search different things. So I can say, so in this case, let's say a text record. So let's say we've added a text record. In our case, as soon as I hit search, we should have the same values every place across the board. Oops, did I put in the wrong? I would only do name servers. Maybe name servers is a better example. There we go. So this is Peter's created the site for us. So this is on Hover, I assume. So here it's showing us the name servers for the site. They're all the same across the board. So, but this would be a great place to catch. Let's say you've changed the name servers. You've gone from one hosting company to another, and you're waiting for that change to be applied. I would sit here and refresh it and make sure eventually, the change has been applied everywhere. Then the site should be up and running, especially when you're launching a new site. This is something that could easily burn people if you're not familiar with this. You've just launched a site. You're like, wait a minute, how come I'm not seeing it? Why is it still showing this old site if I've migrated something over? This is a good free tool to check those domain settings.
Right, real quick, just go to the just type in viewdns.info.
Sure.
Yeah.
Viewdns.
I've shown this before, but it's
info or info.
.info, right?
Okay. Oh yeah, I've used this one before.
So this is very similar, and there is like a propagation checker in here. But checking what's nice about this is a lot of times, if I'm working on a site and something's going wonky, or I'm going to transfer something for a customer or whatever, this has reverse direct. It's just a a simple set of tools that gives you a lot. The one Ray just showed was great because it gets into a level of detail. This has a lot of just kind of text readouts. One of the things that gets really interesting is when you do the reverse IP lookup and find out how many people are sharing your server. You know, there's all kinds of.
I'm fascinated with the Chinese firewall
Yes,
test.
exactly. But there's
I've never seen them.
Yeah, there's a lot of tests kind of right here in front, and you start experimenting. But I usually start with the the IP who is. IP history is an interesting one because we've had situations where a customer says, "Hey, my site's gone," and they didn't pay for their it wasn't anything I was dealing with. They dealt with the registration and found out that it now is owned by somebody in another country or something. So all kinds of stuff. But it gives you an idea of all these tools that you can use to check a lot of the things that are happening on the backbone of the internet. The DNS stuff, domain name server, it's kind of how everything connects to everything, and all those little records on all of these machines. This gives you a little clue into all that stuff, just like the DNS check.
And I think the other one we probably showed too is that MX Toolbox as well too.
MX Toolbox.
Yeah, that one's for mail settings and all that. So that's how we could.
Very good, and that's where you can start looking at things like if you're blacklisted anywhere,
Right.
Which is important. Deliver me an email. We could do a whole thing on, and
that
keep an eye on the time. We're cutting into our hour of talk, so.
All right. So again, these are ones probably more, we're calling it auditing and testing, more specialized, but again, there are probably situations where you'll need to use them. These are yours, Peter. So I'm gonna
Oh yeah. No, just real quick, and we've talked about them. Let me grab the screen. Share. I love these two sites, InstaWP. Oh, no, that's Instagram. InstaWP. Spin up a WordPress environment in less than a second. It really does start a website for you. I do have an account here. It shows that I have something. If I want to add a new website, I want to put it on 6.1, PHP 8.2, create the site, gave me a site. I even have a magic login. Oh, look at that.
Ooh, it's done.
Insta. What are you doing? Maybe I did it too fast.
Too many of us are hitting it maybe at the same time.
Yeah. So, well, there's the site, and I was logged in. It just didn't show because it's already showing that I'm logged in, and it's a full blown WordPress install. What's interesting about InstaWP is they offer paid. I have a paid account, and you can set up things like blueprints for things. You can create a site and migrate it over, and you'll also start seeing more and more people do when they do a demo of even their plugin or something. I've seen this, like Jamie Marsland is doing this, where he has a video talking about something, and he gives you a link which basically spins up an InstaWP with the stuff that he had. So it's a great way to experiment with WordPress. Taste WP, very, very similar, the same type of thing where you can set up a site. I have an account with that. They have my email, so then instead of like a 2-hour or 2-day or whatever, I get 7 days, something like that for a website. But what's really neat about these is real quick, I think I showed this last time. If I'm looking, I have there's a Chrome extension. If I want to look at a plugin and say I wanted to look at, well, I guess it doesn't matter. I'm thinking too much, but say I just wanted to try it with the Gutenberg plugin. That Create It Now was right on that page because I have a Chrome extension. I didn't have to do anything. I just clicked the button that they injected into the WordPress.org page, and now I have just spun up. You could see this URL it's a temporary URL, but I am running. Let me publish that. Sure. I mean, you could run it just as you wish, but what they've done is they installed this site, and
so it's a good way to test out a plugin in a website, right, without having to install it on one of your existing sites.
Exactly. The only thing with Taste WP, I think I mentioned last time, is they do have their own plugins. The reason they're giving it away for free is because they're kind of sneaking in there. You could delete their plugins, but the backup migration, copy, delete, these are all Taste WP ones. But anyway, two great, if you just want to experiment, InstaWP or Taste WP are great places to just go and set up a website. Do I have anything else? Oh, and the infamous WP theme detector. I always, we use this a lot here, where you put in, we'll use Hartford again. You just put in a URL, you let it do its thing, and what it'll do. And there are a lot of tools that do this, but I found that WP theme detector returns the best results. Similarly, while that's finding its site, another kind of tool that is part of the test it out experiment is the Built With website.
Yeah.
Builtwith.com. We've shown this. Built With, I don't know how their database, the results are always instantaneous. And they're showing that we got WordPress plugins.
And just to give some context to people too, like, why would you want this tool? Like, why would you want to know this? For me, I found quite often, again, dealing with clients, but again, if you think about if you're starting off, somebody's looking at another site and they're like, I like how this site looks.
Exactly.
Well, how is this built? One of the first things I'll do is I'll check, is it a WordPress site? Is it a Wix or whatever? Because that just helps ground me a little bit in terms of understanding the technology and what's possible. And then if it's a WordPress site, and let's say there's a neat feature, they're saying, boy, I really like how they're doing X, Y, and Z on the site. Most likely it's a plugin that's doing it. So these tools are a great way to, instead of contacting somebody saying, hey, how does this, how'd you do that? You can really see what kind of plugins they've installed. And again, if they're open plugins or they're in this repository, that's why you would use a tool like this.
Even though the showcase isn't there, and I know it's because I copy and pasted too many things all over the place and it messed up the URLs to stuff. This whole box with the link and all is, oh, did he go and create that? No, actually, you could see I have a plugin called the Visual Link Preview plugin that I'm experimenting with. And you can go take a look at it. And the WP theme detector found that when I looked at Hartford WP, and this is the plugin that I installed that allowed me to go and just put in a URL and it creates the box with the image and all that kind of stuff. And because I got Taste WP, if I wanted to try it there's that link injected into because I have the Chrome extension. There's my, try this plugin in a free install on the Taste WP site. So there you go. Back to you, Ray.
All right, and these I'll cover really quick because again, these are probably more not for everyone, but good to know that they're there. So Visual Studio Code, again, another tool that may be a little intimidating if you're kind of a beginner with WordPress. Probably is more, I'd say, intermediate to / advanced. But the idea is if you want to look at a site or look at some code, in most cases, you don't want to open up code in Word or something like that because the format is going to get all messed up and you lose context. So tools like this, Visual Studio is just one. There's Notepad++ is similar too. There's other ones like this that they'll not just only show you the code, but they'll format it for you or give you some visual indicators. So I'll show you just an example of here's Visual Studio Code. Again, free tool from Microsoft, but really nothing to do specifically with Microsoft technology. So here is, I have a local WordPress website, and I've pointed this code editor at the directory. So it's showing you all the files that are on this. This is our WP Animal Shelter, I think, when we were first building it. So the cool thing is when you click on any of the PHP files, again, if you don't know code, this may look a little bit strange to you, but if I look at one of these PHP files, it's showing you things, it's formatting, it's showing you comments are in green, it's showing you things that basically, functions are in a different color. So you get a lot more meaning and context than if you just open this up, let's say in Notepad or something like that. And then, for example, like the WP config, showing you all of your settings in here. So again, you may not always need to look at a tool like this, but as you get more advanced into WordPress, if you need to make coding changes, if you're creating child themes and getting a little bit more complicated, you certainly want to use a better editor than like WordPress itself. You can edit files. You get that giant warning message saying, don't do this, or be aware. This is an example where, from a workflow standpoint, what I would do is, let's say if I've got to make a change to a website, and if I have to touch, a file or PHP code, I would obviously make my change first in Visual Studio, save that, I have my backup, then I'll use the FTP, I'll use FileZilla to then overlay a file, or, et cetera, et cetera. So, and that's Visual Studio Code. Notepad++.
Yeah, Ray, I'm curious if you use it.
I tried it back when I was doing code development, because it's been around for a while. I didn't get into the environment of it. I think I fell more into Visual. I used to use Visual Studio.net, so I think Visual Studio Code is more familiar to me. So I haven't used it much.
Yeah, so without getting into the details as the time runs out, but Notepad++, completely free program. You load it onto your PC, and it is. I have it open in a window like all the time, and even when I'm copying and pasting things, you copy and paste into a notepad, now you've got straight text. So if you move it somewhere else, it's not carrying any coding. So that's at the very basic. It is Notepad, but there's so many things that are built into it. You could tell it what language it is, and it'll do the color coding, like Ray, you're showing here in Visual Studio. There are things that you can put a list of stuff and change the order and all. But Notepad++ is a great addition if you have to work with text files. If you want to look at I use the SVG files, which are vector images on a website. They're actually just code, and if you want to look at or even change something, if you're at that level, Notepad++ is a great place. You look at your SVG file. Did this all this morning, and you right click on it and say open edit Notepad++. Up comes the code that's there, and change it, save it. It's a great tool that I use daily.
And that's a key thing too. I'm glad, because that's another thing that people can get burned on a lot of times. If you're copying text from someplace, yeah. I mean, I use the Visual Studio Code similarly. Like I can just create a blank text file, but the idea is when you copy something, you don't want all the formatting there, or you want to see what else it's copying behind the scenes. So don't just use, like I said, Word or something else, because it may copy over additional junk that you don't want. And Hoverify, I don't know if it's Hoverify is my last one. There's another one. Thank you, Peter, for showing me this, because this was a kind of a Swiss Army knife of a tool. I was using all these different Chrome extensions, basically, that Hoverify does them all in one place. And this is a paid one. I don't think it's a free version of Hoverify, but I love it. So once I saw it, I got it on sale too, but I'm sure it goes on sale quite often. It was pretty reasonably priced, and again. Yeah. It was worth the time savings for me, and rather than keeping up a bunch of different plugins. So I'll show it real quick. It doesn't work on some sites. I'll show it on our site right here. So it's a Chrome extension. So here it is. And when I click on it, there's a lot of things you can do. I mean, you can do this in Chrome itself, or whatever your browser is. So this is an inspect. So normally in Chrome, you can right click on something and just do an inspect, but this is inspect plus, I guess you would say, because what we talked about before, it's really easy to see as I move around, as I hoverify around different parts, it'll show me all the CSS settings, it'll show me all the classes, etc. So you can see this in the Google Chrome inspect tool, but this is just a nicer visualization of it. So the other tools that it includes, I used to have separate extensions to show me color palette. So the color palette one is on this page, what colors are being used. What fonts are being used on this page, so again, that idea of you go to someone else's website, you're like, boy, I really like I like the colors, I like the fonts, etc. Tools like this are good ones to understand what's happening behind the scenes. And then another last bit of Hoverify, there's a lot to this. This is one of those, my own advice of learn the tool, learn how to use it. Yeah. I haven't even dived into everything Hoverify does, but it has that built with tool built in. That Peter showed. It has screen captures, which I love. Again, I used to have extensions for this. And then one of my favorite ones is kind of a goofy one, but it's assets. So on this page, show me all the images. So let's say there's some specific image I want to download. You can grab them easily from here and save them in different formats. So that's Hoverify.
It's currently $30 a year. It goes on, I occasionally goes on sale for like $24 or something.
I
So
think I got it for the lifetime sale.
Did you?
I think. Yeah, well, I got from AppSumo. I'm pretty sure it might have been the lifetime sale, around the same price, like 30
I probably
bucks.
did. Yeah, I probably did the same thing. Yeah.
All
Very
right.
good.
Yeah, everyone's favorite, Slack.
I just wanted to capture these things. We were talking about Slack, GitHub. These are in terms of tools people use. We're not going to spend any time on these, but you know, and I'll make sure all these links work. But a lot of times, you know, if you're in the WordPress community and you want to get involved, the conversations take place on Slack. Slack is asynchronous. It's like a big chat and categories and stuff. Some people literally live in Slack. I use it for the times when I need to do. A lot of meetings are held in Slack, which is not a favorite way of operating for me, you know, where you're literally, I'd rather just do the Zoom calls, but you know, they never know how many and from what country. GitHub is where all the development happens for WordPress. I do not use it. In fact, quite honestly, I'm soapboxing here. I find it a little bit of a barrier of entry for a lot of folks, but since so many developers use it, one thing that I guess is being used, right at the beginning, we talked about project management. GitHub has a whole project management thing that is a lot different than the whole software development side of things. But just in case you hear it, you could look at it here. It is a collaboration tool. All of the if you ever hear anybody in WordPress talk about, oh, you should submit a ticket, it's all done through GitHub.
Well, and the big thing about GitHub is it's also a source. You know, these were all source version control tool, and that's what it really started as. So you know, if you're developing your own websites just for yourself, you may not have a need for this. And we talk about WordPress itself has this idea of revisions, you know, per a page. If you have a team building a website, or even you get something more complicated, you may want the ability to roll back changes pretty far back. And when somebody checks in a change, I mean, GitHub, the whole idea behind it was in this agile work development environment to be able to say, hey, who changed this thing, when, why, all that kind of stuff. So that's the core. It's been used for something kind of beyond what it originally started as, but that was at its core purpose. So for that's why I think a lot of people, I agree with you, Peter, it's overkill for, you know, your average WordPress user. But it's, again, I think for teams that are building WordPress itself, I'm sure they're using GitHub for that kind of purpose.
Yeah. I only put Mastodon here because people may start hearing about it if they want to ditch Twitter. Mastodon is part of what they're calling the Fediverse, the federated. Basically, now we're all like, Ray and I could set up a Mastodon server and join so it's Twitter, but instead of it being owned by a company which is going to do all the things that the companies do, and advertising and track and all that kind of stuff. And I only put it here because it's such a hot topic right now, and a lot of folks, and there's a couple of Mastodon installs, one of them being WP Builds set up one, a Mastodon instance. I'm Peter at wpbuilds.social. And more to follow on that, but it's just another communication tool. And then the only other thing I did here is I put a couple audio tools that I use. If anybody has an audio file that sounds like, you know, the whole, you know, you record something in YouTube and somebody's like 6 feet away from the camera in an empty room and it sounds terrible. The Adobe podcast site has added some stuff, and it's stunning the way that they can clean up an audio file, a spoken word audio file through this link. We'll again make sure all the links work. But I tried it, and it's crazy. It sounds like you have, you know, a many $100 microphone and you're in the right studio room, and it kind of just cleans up the audio, and all. It's pretty great. And a tool that I use, I record a lot of things that I then want to convert to text, and I use Otter AI. I do have a paid account. They do have free, and I find it very fairly priced for what it offers as a way of capturing a conversation. Like, say you're with a bunch of people and you just want to have a meeting, and your note taker could be your phone, which is what I use. I have a recorder on my phone, and I upload it to Dropbox, and then from my phone, and then I load it up to Otter AI, and then I get a transcript of the whole conversation. So if anyone needs one, favorite tool, Otter AI is one of my favorites.
That's a good one. Never heard of that one.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Well,
Well, you know,
everyone's heads are spinning now from all the time.
yeah, one thing that I just discovered, and again, in so many cases, like you said, use and discover, is Google Docs has a voice, it's called the voice typer or something. You go to tools and it's voice, and you can speak, you know, kind of like the dragon speaking, if you remember that from years ago. But you know, you can just dictate, and since it's Google, they're real good at it. The only problem that I was having with it, it got everything great, but the whole getting used to, do I just, you know, as I was practicing, I wouldn't normally do this in a day, but I was always wondering, hey, can I use that as a transcription tool? Punctuation challenge. It tried to, they had a model to do it, and I guess things didn't work and they pulled that out. So, you know, if I say full stop period, you know, that type of thing.
Connie mentions another tool called Google Recorder. I didn't know that they had. I mean, you know, it's sad. Google has all these tools. They basically don't even like advertise very well, and they sort of throws them away. Yeah, I've never tried that one. So you can see the text in recorder.google.com. Oh, very neat. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, that Adobe thing is, so I guess it's Adobe Podcast. So they're looking to get into, you know, as they expand into all the different file formats. So podcasting and helping people edit. You know, this is another tool that I'm starting to use is called Camtasia. A screen capture tool that I use, a paid one, is called Snagit, which is part of the, it's by TechSmith. And Camtasia's got, Camtasia's not cheap. And then they have this other tool that's not cheap, where you could even edit your video through text and it will AI put in the word in your voice. It's crazy. The world is crazy. There's
Seema mentions a tool I've used before too. That's a good one too. Seema, Loom. I've used Loom to do recordings for clients sometimes, or I would show them, like do a quick training video, or sometimes like somebody, I'd say just you know, capture what you're doing so I can see it. You know, someone said, I used to find, actually I used the Loom a lot more before the pandemic, believe it or not, before people learned how to use Zoom. Now Zoom, I just tell them, get on a Zoom and show me, and we'll share our screens. But yeah, Loom is a nice way to record them. I don't know if Loom is what I'm thinking of as well too, where you can put text, you can also do subtitles to it as well too. So. Yeah,
there's a number of tools that are really, really good, but they're Mac only, so I know nothing about them.
Yeah. Well, I know we actually got
all the time.
We got through our list. But everyone we have a ton of great suggestions too in the chat. So we'll make sure this time too that we share the chat transcript. I think there's a lot of great ideas there. And we'd love to hear more from you afterwards too. Like I said, come to the Facebook group, share other tools that you've thought of. I think going back to the very beginning of this, I had a wrap-up slide, then nothing on it, but you know, it's just like Peter was saying in the beginning, just knowing that there's probably a tool out there that can solve the problem that you have. Sometimes it's articulating your problem in such a way to say, hey, I need a tool that can do this, and this, and then Google search for it, usually free or paid or whatever. You're highly likely to find something, you know, and sometimes think of it outside of, and the reason for this talk, I'm actually glad, I don't think we really talked about anything in this talk that was a plugin for WordPress. We usually cover it in the beginning. If you're here for the first time, Peter often covers like a new plugin he shows us, or a tool, but you know, a lot of times it's plugins. So it's just to kind of show you, sometimes you got to go to tools outside of WordPress to solve a problem, and then later, you know, by the time you do it, it's a lot easier to pull into your website. So hopefully we gave you a lot of ideas. That link is going to be active. We'll fix the links, links on that page.
Or we'll fix the links, and we'll keep building out that page, and we'll take suggestions. And as we grab our tools and stuff, I think we both want to make sure that we have a place where we're kind of, we have a reference area for some of the things. I like the practical sharing of stuff, and then when somebody else has a tool that you know is just amazing, you know, we discover these things. The Adobe Express is a recent discovery that I'm like, oh my, that is great. Yeah.
I know we only have a couple of minutes left. I apologize, we didn't get a lot of time to do our regular kind of Q&A. Or is there anyone have any follow-up questions or anything? Just in the last couple of minutes that we have, any
in the Ask Me Anything part of the show?
I don't see anything in the chat
I
or,
think we wore everybody out.
yeah, I think we wore you out. I'm sorry for our first one here. So yeah, like I said, we'll send out. So again, if you missed it, this has been recorded probably sometime tomorrow at the end of the day. I'll send out a notice to everyone through Meetup. If you RSVP, you'll get that. So the recording will be out on our YouTube channel. We'll also include a link to the transcript as well, the chat transcript, because I think there are a lot of great suggestions in there, and a link to the page that we're showing, so you can just easily navigate to them. So thank you, everyone. Again, thanks for joining. Hopefully you come back. Like I said, we have some good topics lined up for the next couple of months or so here. So we look forward to seeing everyone again. So have a good night, everyone. Take care.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.